Some legends involve sacred relics, objects that supposedly hold the key to divinity itself, and few are as alluring and captivating as the Holy Grail. We were all familiar with the story, the chalice from which Christ drank at the Last Supper. A vessel of miraculous power, right? But what if the quest for the Grail wasn't just the stuff of Arthurian myth? What if, behind the fantastical tales, there was a very real, very powerful organization charged with its protection? Today, we were not chasing fantasy. We are chasing history and focusing on a group of men often overlooked in the Grail narrative, the Knights Hospitaller. The Knights Hospitaller, officially the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, were not your typical knights in shining armor. Their story begins in 11th century Jerusalem. Think about it. Pilgrims were arriving in the Holy Land, often sick, injured, and vulnerable. A group of Benedictine monks focused on charitable work established a hospital caring for the sick and needy. And that was how they began. This act of charity would evolve dramatically. The First Crusade in 1099 changed everything. The need for military protection grew along with the need for healing. The Hospitallers, initially focused on healing the body, found themselves increasingly drawn to defending the faithful. They transformed, or perhaps better said, expanded. They became a military order, warrior monks sworn to protect pilgrims and the Holy Land, but never losing their deep connection to service. Imagine a group of men equally skilled with a sword and a medical kit. Over time, the Hospitallers became immensely powerful. They controlled vast territories in the Mediterranean, built formidable fortresses, and amassed considerable wealth. They were a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield and in the political arena. But with power comes whispers, and the Hospitallers, steeped in secrecy, were prime candidates for such whispers. They became figures shrouded in a kind of mystery. Did they know secrets that others did not? Did their close connection to the Holy Land give them access to relics that other orders did not possess? This brings us back to our central question. The Grail, the legendary cup said to hold immense power, the object of endless quests and desperate desires. We are familiar with the common myths about it being held by various guardians, including some of the figures from the Arthurian tales. But is it possible that the true guardians were not the fictional figures, but this very real and very powerful military order, the Knights Hospitaller? The idea is not as far-fetched as it might seem. They were certainly in the right place at the right time. They had the resources, and most importantly, they had a deep connection to the Christian faith and an unwavering dedication to protecting sacred things. Let's take a look at the arguments, the hints, the tantalizing pieces of evidence that have led some historians and researchers to suspect that the Hospitallers were deeply connected to the Grail story. First, the timeline fits. The Hospitallers were extremely active in the Holy Land during the Crusades, precisely the period when many believed the Grail was most vulnerable and in need of protection. Second, their unwavering dedication to the holy sites makes them prime candidates for such an important role. They weren't just soldiers. They were devoted warriors sworn to defend the sanctity of the Christian faith. If the Grail needed an organization to be entrusted with its protection, the Hospitallers would fit the bill perfectly. And let's not ignore the secrecy. We know from history that the Hospitallers kept their internal affairs incredibly private. Their rites, ceremonies, and internal communications were not public or for general consumption. This makes it much easier to hide things, doesn't it? A sacred relic like the Grail needing to be kept secret and away from the prying eyes of the world could easily fit into this clandestine structure. This also makes the search for evidence complicated. But there are other compelling possibilities. What if their wealth was partly derived from their possession of the Grail? What if their sudden emergence and power were linked to some kind of miraculous artifact? But this is where things get interesting. The case for the Hospitallers guarding the Grail is built on circumstantial evidence and historical interpretations, not on indisputable facts. There is no hard evidence, no document, no ancient text that explicitly states that the Hospitallers were the guardians of the Grail. Historians, while acknowledging its importance, generally do not support the idea. They point out that there is absolutely no historical basis for the idea. The Order's historical archives simply make no mention of the Grail, and the Order's many enemies, who would certainly have taken any opportunity to use this information against them, never accuse them of having it. The Grail, let's remember, is as much a story as it is a potential historical artifact. Many believe that its symbolism and power are more important than its physical existence. The Grail is about faith and spirituality, so some will argue the idea that it is kept in some vault by some secret society misses the point entirely. The Grail exists as a story. So many historians argue there is no need to seek a physical guardian for an object that is not and never was intended to be a tangible thing. Besides, the Order had many other more pressing concerns: holding territory, fending off invasions, and protecting trade routes. That doesn't mean they didn't have it, but it does raise questions about how actively they would have sought or tried to protect it. So what are we left with? Did the Knights Hospitaller guard the Holy Grail? The honest answer is we don't know definitively. It's a tantalizing possibility, an interesting question, and one that straddles the line between historical fact and speculation. The lack of definitive evidence doesn't necessarily negate the possibility. The Hospitallers were an immensely powerful, fiercely private, and deeply influential organization. The very possibility that they may have secretly guarded one of Christianity's most sacred relics is enough to spark intrigue and keep the fires of speculation burning.